So, DPD test kits. So test kits, yeah, that's what they're selling. And I just wanted to have you stop and think for a moment, what is actually doing the detecting? And, a little bit of a trick question possibly, because you may not think of your eye as a detector. Well, eventually, we may start this today. If not, we'll come to it on Tuesday, not tomorrow, not Monday, but Tuesday. Yeah, we'll be back here on Tuesday. Um, so uh, we will be looking at this simulation of an instrument. And in this simulation of an instrument, here you see a instrument with a little detector on it that we put down in here, and it's actually going to tell us the concentration in moles per liter. Well, how this detector is working is it is using light in the same way that your eye can detect the light and compare it to a color of plastic. And when we add a solute to the solvent, you'll notice the solution gets darker. So this is like the drink mix that I couldn't find yesterday. And you notice the more and more of that drink mix we add, the more concentrated it gets. And we're measuring that in moles per liter. So we can dilute that. We can drain out a little bit. We can dilute it some more. But it is a ratio of moles per liter. And this process works for all kinds of chemicals because many chemicals, when they dissolve in water, they change the way light passes through the water. And sometimes that light may be visible light that you can detect with your eye and go, oh, that drink concentrate or that potassium chromate, that looks pretty concentrated. That looks pretty concentrated. And you can kind of detect that with your eye. So you have a built-in concept of concentration for colored solutions, that the darker, the more deeply colored they become, the more concentrated they are. And you can see that with this device called a colorimeter. And Beer's law is actually a law that describes that if we shine light through a sample, onto a detector, we can measure how much of the original light is transmitted or how much of the light is absorbed by the sample. And if we also get more sophisticated by shining different wavelengths of light through the sample and measuring the absorbance. So we can also change in this particular simulation the concentration of the sample with this slider down here. Another thing that turns out to be really important is how far the light is passing through this sample. And most sampling is done with a sample device, a sample container that's 1 centimeter, so that the light passes through 1 centimeter of solution. And that kind of starts developing a standard for being able to use this kind of a system and develop a system of measuring the concentration of basically anything. Now, all of these are colored so that we can get an idea of the color of the solution. Potassium permanganate, for example. I love the color potassium permanganate. It stains glassware, so chemistry teachers don't really like working with it a lot because it stains glassware. You have to wash it out with concentrated sulfuric acid. But it's a beautiful color. But what if your solution is colorless? Well, it still may affect other wavelengths of light, like infrared light or ultraviolet light may be affected. And so you can design all kinds of systems. So this is a really major analytical technique. And it kind of works like your eye and the pool chemical, but this is more sensitive to specific wavelengths of light. And because we can hook it up to a computer. Now, when I was in high school, we did these labs and we had these little devices, not little, no, they took up a huge amount of space. They were like 2 feet wide and a foot and a half deep and probably 10 inches high. And they were called, Spectronic 20s, Spec 20s. And everybody used them. They were used in all kinds of research, but they were really complicated. And they used this big, huge, expensive test tube. Like the test tubes were $20 a piece, kind of a thing. Well, guess what? With new electronics, these things have come down in price to a little box that would plug into your Chromebook and cost about $160 and work just as well as the Spec 20. And they're just a little tiny box that plugs into your Chromebook. And they're amazing. But you can still spend thousands of dollars on these. Like when I toured the sewer plant, because sewer plants do lots of concentration testing. They test for the concentrations of things that are in the water, and they test for concentrations of things the sewer plant's putting in the water, and they test, how's the effluent, the stuff coming out that goes into Oak Harbor itself after it's been thoroughly processed. We have a great wastewater treatment plant, by the way. Brand new and really expensive also, by the way. But all of the chemicals that they test themselves, many of them are tested with a colorimeter, or more sophisticated, it's called a spectrophotometer. But they're all looking at light and looking at the way light passes through a sample and hits a detector on the other side. And you can still spend tens of thousands of dollars on these, but now, of course, they have electronics and computers that tell you not just how much light is absorbed or transmitted, but tell you very precisely the concentration. So it actually looks a lot more like this, although it's not usually a probe that you put in the water. It's usually something you put a sample of the solution into the machine, and it measures the concentration. Well, I am rambling on because I just happen to really like these pieces of equipment, and that's going to be where we're heading. But what else do we need to look at today? So on my schedule for what I would like to get through today, I want to have you guys go back and revisit. Half of you have not done yesterday's Ed puzzle, and that's not a problem. But I want you to go look at yesterday's Ed puzzle if you haven't finished it, and then one other Ed puzzle. And during the time that you're working on those, and I'm going to put a suggested time here of, I'm going to see if in 20 minutes, if in 20 minutes I can get scores on all your tests that you finished up yesterday. I will go through those with you the last few minutes of the class period. So that's kind of my plan, is to have you work on Edpuzzle, 2 Edpuzzle assignments, and I'm going to work on scoring test stuff. And I'm going to unshare my screen and see if I can not get this mirroring thing going on. Stop presenting. And now when I present again, I don't know. I don't see how this is going to make a difference. Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording, and okay, you've had some time to work on the test or work on Edpuzzle and get those things finished up. Thanks for working on that. I haven't checked to see if you have finished, but hopefully if you hadn't finished the test, you went in and worked on it. I didn't get as far with scoring them as I had hoped, because I found I had to edit a lot of them. In other words, the picture was kind of small and I couldn't see them. So or the picture was sideways, etc. And or I couldn't read it very well, and it took me a while to look at it. So I didn't get them all scored. So I will work on that some over the weekend here. So the way you can make, like if you insert a picture, the way you can change its size is if you click on the picture, just below the picture, there are different ways the picture gets formatted into your document, either the text wrapped around it or between the text or whatever. And you have to choose a different one of those to make your picture bigger. So there were several people that struggled with that. Seeing a lot of people that struggled with units, like you can't put n equals 5. There's no unit on that. N is not a unit for moles. You have to put n equals 5 moles. So there are going to be a lot of little things like that I saw on the test that we're kind of struggling with. But I will try to get that done over the weekend. So there's still, like 10 minutes that if you haven't finished the test, the 3 of you that haven't actually clicked to turn it in, I haven't looked. Maybe it's done or partially done. I didn't actually look at your tests. But go ahead and get those done. Make sure you've got the Edpuzzles done. That is pretty much all for today. And we're going to be back here, of course, on Tuesday, same time, same station. When we come back on Tuesday, we're going to go back to looking at solution concentration. Well, we'll look at your test. Score your test. We'll make sure you have a score on your test. We'll look at solution concentration, how to calculate that, but also how to deal with measuring it, because for the chemist, that's a really important thing. So, yeah, I could go on about that, but I'm going to be quiet, and I am going to stop the recording.